So greetings, everyone, from Canada's national capital, Ottawa. We would first like to acknowledge that since we are in Ottawa, we are on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence reaches back in time. We recognize that all the work we do across Canada stretches across many different Indigenous territories. This includes Inuit, Métis, and more than 900,000 people living in more than 630 First Nations communities in cities and towns across these lands. To get to know each other across Canada, and I see now on all of Turtle Island, if you know your land acknowledgement, please start putting that in the chat. I have a very brief introduction. I just want to thank everyone for being here today, being here in Ottawa. We're a small but mighty group, and we know all of you back home doing your work is really supporting us as well. We can feel you here in our nation's capital. I hope when you read the title of our conference, Keeping It Polite, you kind of chuckled. That was the point. Lastly, I'm really grateful for what everybody is doing and has done and will do. Okay, so I have the honor of introducing to you to the person I second met when I was introduced to Citizens Climate Lobby. And he's the reason why I joined, because the focus and the business model was something I truly appreciated of this organization. Mark and a few other people have been really helpful in mentoring me over the years. I don't think I'd still be here 12 years later, still doing this work if it wasn't for Mark Reynolds. Mark Reynolds is the former and first executive director of Citizens Climate Lobby. I'm sure he needs no introduction to most of you. He's a Star Trek fan, so if you look closely on the announcement of this conference today, it says El Capitan, just as a reference to Star Trek. So Mark, without any further ado, I'm going to let you take over the mic and please go right ahead.
Okay, Kathy, thank you so much. I just want to say how much I appreciate that all of you have included me in being part of the Canadian family. And that tone was really set early, and then it's just continued. So the very first group launch, I was in Toronto. Cheryl McNamara and I had lunch before. She came in wearing one of those, Peruvian hats where it goes down, kind of the covering your ears. And I knew instantly that I had met one of my lifetime soulmates. And so we did 2 events in Toronto, came up to Sudbury. Everything about being in Sudbury was magical. I'm from San Diego. Kathy took me through a walk through the woods to get to the group lunch. I think the snow was about a foot deep. We're going by the beautiful trees with the white bark. And then at the end of the group launch, Kathy trains everybody in Jai Ho. And it blew my mind. So I decided we're going to have to do this at the next US conference. So Kathy came, we did it. The person who was going to speak right after Kathy was Captain Wayne Porter from the Pentagon. He's standing out in the hallway in his full military whites, looking a little bit sheepish. So he had written a paper for the Pentagon, talking about that the Pentagon could reimagine its view of the world and could perhaps change that view from containment to sustainment. He had done that with an author named Colonel Mickleby. He was on the phone with Mickleby when I came out and said, I think I showed up at a conference for interpretive dance. And I just assured him that we as an organization roll a little bit differently. So that was really exciting doing that. I also very much appreciate having been included in the early conferences in Ottawa. And as we were doing a tour of the building and I saw those bridges, I remember walking across those bridges when it was really cold, when the wind was coming up the Ottawa River. But I really loved that and being able to come on Parliament Hill with all of you. And also for those of you who've been able to come to June in DC, you have made that particularly special. If you were one of the people that Marshall invited up on the stage and you're all saying, oh, Canada, that's one of the most still chilling moments to me of the conference ever. And then the time when Jim Hansen was speaking And the Canadian contingent was sitting in the back right part of the room all together. And Dr. Hansen talked about one of the biggest coal mines in the world still being in Canada. And you hold collectively, all the Canadians say, sorry. So it was just this great moment. One last thing about going to Sudbury for me is I'm a lifetime Jeopardy geek. All my kids watch Jeopardy. We love Jeopardy. And so being able to go where Alex Trebek was from was really special for me. And actually the current champion is a 24-year-old woman from Toronto. She's won 18 games and almost $500,000. But what happened is after Alex died, they have two people that host the show. There's a woman named Mayim Bialik. When she hosts it, they say the host of Jeopardy. When Ken Jennings, the longtime Jeopardy champ, hosts, they say hosting Jeopardy. So she's the host, they call him hosting. So my little love note to Jeopardy was earlier this year when I would host the monthly calls, I would have Alyssa Tennant from marketing, just not put any title, but just say hosting the call. And I think as Alyssa said, she and I were the only ones in on it. There was a little Jeopardy riff, but as she says, sometimes private jokes are the best jokes. Okay, so where are we at this moment? Where we are is there are 587 chapters around the world. There are 73 countries. And in one country, we've achieved our primary legislative goal, and that's Canada. So that's a big deal. For the first time ever, in June, we will be doing a worldwide week of action. And everybody in the 72 other countries will be able to point to Canada and say, this was done. I think it's a really important thing for you to really celebrate. You know, we as climate and environmental activists tend to nothing's ever good enough for us. You know, it wasn't fast enough. It's not big enough. It's like, it should have happened sooner. You know, we're kind of like that. That's our nature. But I do think this is such a big deal that we should really, really celebrate it. We have been working for 13 years on how to improve our ability to communicate on climate change. And it took us a long time to learn that really what that was about being better listeners. You know, we initially all learned our laser talks. We went and lectured everybody to death. And sometimes that turned people off because they were interested in what they were doing, not what we were doing. But I think we have learned to be better listeners. And I think we're going to find out from one of our conference speakers in June that we're going to have to kick that to another level. I hope you can stream Amanda Ripley's, the panel she's on. She wrote a book called High Conflict. And what she asserts is conflict in general is a good thing. It's a clash of ideas. It's how we work things out. But when you get to the point of high conflict, winning and losing isn't enough. The only thing that's satisfying is humiliating your opponent. And as you can see that in a lot of political systems, definitely in the US, but around the world. And it's certainly the language that Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi of China talk about being humiliated by the West. That doesn't justify anything they've done. Nothing could justify what Mr. Putin's doing. But you can see that being humiliated is now at a point where they're really doing things that they're doing. And I suspect what we're going to learn from Ms. Ripley is, once again, we're going to have to go a little deeper for ourselves, ask ourselves more of our own humanity in finding out how to connect people in these very, very difficult and challenging times. 19 years ago, I went to a talk, and the nature of the talk was, could you live your life in a way that your life was a contribution to life itself? And that changed my life. It became one of the primary focuses of trying to find the people who seem to emulate that, people who are examples of their life being a contribution, people who studied it. How could you get at that? 30 years ago, I went to the best talk on that topic I had ever heard. And I was scribbling notes furiously for over an hour in a ballroom in San Francisco, in a hotel ballroom in San Francisco. And then the gentleman speaking said, so in life, you're going to meet two kinds of people. Some people, all they care about is what they want. And he said, those people's lives stink. Now, he used actually a stronger word than stink, but he didn't say it like it was opinion they stink. He was saying it was like with fact. He said that occasionally you're going to meet people and what they care about is what's wanted and needed. And their lives will be hard. And he walked off the stage. So I turned to my friend Gordon and I'm like, you can't end a talk like that, right? You can't just say, if you do what's wanted, your life will be hard and then just leave us there. That's not right, can you? Anyhow, I wanted to say that because sometimes this work can be hard. And when it is hard, hopefully you and I can remind ourselves that's because we are doing what is wanted and needed. Thank you so much for including me again. So appreciate part of this. Can't wait to be able to come back there in October of 23 for the 10-year celebration. Thank you, Kathy, and everybody.
Thank you so much, Mark. Yes, what is hard? This is hard. Thank you. So we'll take about a 4-minute break and just chillax if you need to get up and walk around. And I'll just do a sound check with Darren. But Mark, that was amazing. Does anybody want to say anything to Mark in the meantime? Any comments? Anyone?
Mark, you are wanted and needed by us. Thank you for your work.
Oh, there's comments here in the room. I lost it. There, you got to come closer.
Yeah, Mark, it's Keith McNeil, and thank you very much. We really appreciate all the work you've done over the years.
Go ahead, Tom.
Hi, Mark. Great to see you, even virtually. I don't know if I'll be able to make it to DC in June. As I'm just wondering if you got time to give us a quick thumbnail about the June conference for anybody who might be considering it.
Well, I think that it's going to be streamed, so you don't have to think about coming to DC. And so, everything will be available, plus it will be recorded. I think Ms. Ripley's comments will be super interesting. You can check on the website, there is a really strong lineup of key speakers, including Senator Whitehouse is going to come to the reception. So I think if you look, you'll see that there are some people that will be of interest to you. There's about 400 people to register to come live. We're going to have tables so that there's more distancing than there usually has been in the past. We're going to try and be as safe as we can, but what I'm hoping is that most people, just for their own safety, stream the conference.
Great, thanks a lot.
Yeah, good to hear your voice again, Tom.
Hello, Mark. My name is Yogo Cardo. I'm a PhD student in economics at the University of Toronto. I was just curious to know, what is your reaction when you see study regarding the carbon pricing and dividend in Canada and I think it's Switzerland, where it's actually not socially acceptable to have it in the most popular program for cap and trade, which is for me counterintuitive. But this is what the study has shown so far.
Kathy, I couldn't hear the question entirely.
Okay, just there was studies being done, like the counterintuitive studies of cap and trade being somewhat more popular than carbon fee and dividend. That's probably way too deep of a question for today, like because we're running out of time. That was a great question, though. We will explore that.
Sure, but is the question about the popularity of it?
Yeah, the popularity of the various policies.
Sure. I mean, everything's going to be easier than a carbon tax or carbon fee. Everything's going to be easier to sell than that. That's always going to be the case. So we can't worry about that. What we have to worry about is what's the right thing to do and make sure that we can do it. I mean, there's so many flaws in a cap and trade system and so easy to rig the system, but those are not compelling arguments to the public in general. They're for us because we're all climate nerds. This is all we think about. But it's a small set of us that understand all the nuances of that. But the general public, we have to always think about winning over everybody and giving your MPs ammunition that they can easily explain things with. I think your next speaker is due now, Kathy. Thank you. Nice to meet you, and thanks again.
You know what? There's one more person here. Really say something. Will you be
okay.
Very fast, Kathy? It's not a question. It's not a question.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, nice to see you.
Follows on your story about the lecture. Maybe you could have ended the lecture like this. This is not from me. I can't remember who wrote it, but I remembered it for a long time. So I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I woke and found that life was duty. I acted, and behold, duty was joy.
Wow. Okay. Awesome.